So, Ted Bundy. So I just want to start this video by saying that I myself was a victim of violent physical abuse about 25 years ago. He broke my rib, he beat me really badly on multiple occasions, and on 2 occasions he tried to kill me. So I know what it means to be a victim of a violent crime. Now, since I was a teenager, I've had what could be considered a pretty normal interest in serial killers. I had been reading a lot of Stephen King novels, and then I just got into books like Helter Skelter. I personally was never really interested in Ted Bundy. I'm a little bit ashamed to even say that I thought he was boring. I remember watching his interview at the prison on TV the night before his execution, and I just thought, and that's not me trying to diminish what he did, but if you compare the depravity of Ted Bundy with, say, Jeffrey Dahmer, I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer was fucked up. So I never really did a lot of research into Ted Bundy, anything like that, but I did see all the reviews about the new documentary on Netflix. So like 2 days ago, I gave in and I watched the documentary on Netflix. And I was like, oh my God, I understand now why people are so fascinated with this guy. Can we just be honest here for a second? He was a handsome guy. He was definitely charming. There were a couple times in the documentary where they showed some old footage. And one of them in particular was when they were reading the indictment to him in Florida, and they brought him into the room and they were reading the indictment, and it was like he had this presence, and you can feel it even through the screen. You can feel that presence. You know, he looks directly in the camera when, you know, they're reading his indictment. He looks into the camera, and it's like that moment, you know that he knows, that everybody knows that he did it, you know, and then he struts around that room, and he knows, everybody in that room knows that he killed those women. And then there's another really short clip of him on trial at the defendant's table, and he looks over at the camera, and he flirts with the camera. He gives like a smile. You know, I've always been kind of bored with Ted Bundy, but watching the documentary, some of the photos, you know, you can feel him looking at you. Some of these monsters have this overwhelming, powerful presence that a lot of people are confused by. You're not interpreting it as evil. It's overpowering. Someone like him that has this overwhelming presence, you can feel it. Even when you're just watching it on Netflix, you can see that charisma. You can see how these beautiful women were tricked into going with him. That doesn't mean I'm attracted to him. It just means I get it. I see it. And I see it because my own boyfriend, the one that beat the shit out of me, he had a huge personality. He was actually kind of a hero in his hometown. He had a very prestigious job. People loved him. And people did things for him that they wouldn't do for other people. Now, a lot of people are criticizing the movie and their choice to cast Zac Efron in the lead. They say he's too handsome and he's coming off as too charming. The problem is that the worst monsters, they are charming. They are good looking. My boyfriend, he did a lot of other really bad things. My boyfriend was a lieutenant in the Russian Honor Guard. Very prestigious unit. As a lieutenant, he had soldiers underneath him. He beat one of these soldiers so badly, he couldn't hear anymore. And he did some other things that I don't really want to commit to video, but let's just say they were bad. One time, he and I had a really kind of nasty argument on the subway, and he and I were just exchanging words. This was before he started beating me, but he got so angry with me that got off the subway car and we were walking down the center to get out of the metro, this guy ran into him. He broke his face open. He beat him so hard. So the police, they were so charmed by my boyfriend, they didn't believe the guy who had his whole face bashed in. This story about someone who was genuinely a monster, who brutally murdered dozens of women. There isn't a better choice than Zac Efron to play that part. He had to be true to the real Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was an attractive, charming man. This movie had to be made exactly the way it was made. There was actually a lot of input from one of his survivors, and she has said that she stands behind the film. I love that they cast this man who is conventionally attractive, who women will find attractive and charming, and that even though, in spite of his being attractive and charming, he was still capable of committing these horrible, horrible crimes. So in spite of being attractive and charming, he was still a monster. And that's the point. My boyfriend was handsome and charming, but he had a dark, dark place inside of him that he would go to. My hope is that people will go and they will see the movie and they will watch the documentary and they will go to their friends and they'll go to their children and they'll say, look, this person looks great, they sound great, but maybe they're doing something that seems a little off. Maybe you get a bad feeling from them. So even if they're smiling at you with this kind of, sly grin, which Ted Bundy was really good at. He was great at flirting. One of the things I loved about the documentary is they spent a lot of time on Ted Bundy's girlfriend. And a lot of people are misinterpreting that it's making him look like he was romantic and he had this girl that really loved him and they were in love and everything was awesome. But they seem to be completely ignoring that even though they did seem like they were really in love and it did seem like they had a pretty romantic relationship, she was still like, something's off, something's wrong, and she actually called the police and told them, he has said these weird things and there's these crimes that are happening and I think it could be my boyfriend. And this is a message that so many people seem to be ignoring from the documentary. Even though he was charming, even though he was handsome, he was giving off this weird vibe. And there were women who were like, he's attractive, he's charming, but there's something really weird. And they acted on that. That is a fantastic lesson. What value is there in a lesson where you're saying, this creepy, greasy guy who looks like Quasimodo, so they're the only people who are bad, who will hurt you are the ones that are ugly and creepy and weird. The real message that's coming from this is a guy that looks like Zac Efron, who's charming as hell, can still be a monster. I never thought that my boyfriend was going to turn into a monster. And there were signs early on. There were signs that I should have listened to. But the other part of me was like, oh, he's so cute, and he's got this great job, and he looks so cute in uniform. And that was the wrong voice to listen to. And, when everything started really spiraling out of control, I would go to people and say, he's doing this and this and this to me. And people were like, oh, but we really like him. And you guys are so cute together. And people didn't believe me. I mean, I look at Ted Bundy and I imagine him in a cast at the beach with a VW bug, and he was probably a little tan, and he was probably really charming with that smile. And, you know, a few women actually were like, this seems weird, and I'm not going with you to do whatever it is that you want me to do because it's weird. I thought it was interesting that in The Silence of the Lambs, I mean, can we just be honest? Buffalo Bill was not cute. Now, that actor is not unattractive, but in the movie it was creepy, right? So, in the movie, I think that they didn't respect Ted Bundy's victims enough. So, in The Silence of the Lambs, when they have this kind of creepy guy, and he has a van, and it's dark, and it definitely is kind of like, it's so obvious that she should not be helping him. You know, again, it's dark, he has a huge van, he looks creepy. Like, why would you help him, right? Which plants that seed in your head. Like, why would anyone go with Ted Bundy? But again, like, it was daylight. He was handsome. He was injured. And he was charming. And I think, honestly, that's so much scarier to a lot of people. It definitely creates this feeling like there's no way to prevent things like that from happening. You know, when a normal looking person who's injured comes to you and asks for help, your very normal reaction is to go, yeah, okay, I'll help you put something on the top of your car. Your small little VW bug in the middle of the day with thousands of people here at the beach with us. Yeah, why not? It definitely is giving the impression that victims are often powerless to do anything. So while it's definitely teaching us to trust our instincts more, it's also saying some people are victimized through absolutely no fault of their own. And I think that scares people. So Netflix, who put out the documentary. What is wrong with you people? So Netflix put out this tweet. So Netflix reminds people on Twitter that Ted Bundy was an evil serial killer. I've seen a lot of talk about Ted Bundy's alleged hotness. Yeah, and here's the issue that I have with that. Admitting that he was hot, admitting that he was charming, isn't justifying that he murdered 30 women, and would like to gently remind everyone that there are literally thousands of hot men on the service, almost all of whom are not convicted serial murderers. But see, to me, what tweets like that say, and actually what a lot of comments similar to that, like the ones that are saying, he is not hot, he was not charming. See, a lot of us are willing to admit that he was handsome and he was charming, and that just because he was handsome and charming doesn't take away any of what he did. We're just being objective. But the impression that I get from all of these comments about, you know, how dare you say he was handsome? How dare you say he was charming? To me, what you're really saying is, you're so much smarter than those stupid girls that went with him. You're so much more intelligent. You would never, ever be dumb enough to go off with a serial killer, you know, and there's no amount of hotness in the world that would hide someone being evil and a serial killer. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong, and these guys, and they're mostly guys, these guys hide. What was it that Dexter calls it? His dark passenger? They hide that way deep down inside. No one can see it. And I think when you're saying this, is you are absolutely victim shaming. You're saying that you're way too smart to fall for any of that crap. But here's the thing. you're wrong. But you're never going to admit that you're wrong, because then you would have to admit that you're actually powerless in some situations and that you could have been a victim, just like those dumb girls who couldn't see right through Ted Bundy's charming, handsome exterior. Sorry, but you would not have seen through it any better than all those poor girls. All it is you feeling superior and feeling like you would never have given into his charms because you think he's an ugly, disgusting troll. Totally forgetting that you have the power of hindsight. So the movie and the documentary had to be made. They had to be made the way they were made. And please learn from these movies. Go to your kids. Talk to them. Teach them to trust their instincts. Teach them that just because someone looks great on the outside doesn't mean that they're good or safe people. They could be worse monsters than everyone else. So I just have one last request. I am asking specifically social justice warriors to back off. I personally have grown so tired of people who have not been victims of abuse, victims of sexual assault. If you have not been a victim, stop speaking for victims. Like, if victims haven't asked you to speak for them, don't speak for us. Because you always do it wrong. Back off and shut up and stop speaking for us, because you don't know what we want to say. The movie has the support of one of Bundy's survivors. But, of course, SJWs always, but of course, like 20-something SJWs always know better, right? Of course, they know much better than these women who survived these violent attacks. And I'm just going to comment really quick. The most annoying person in the entire documentary was that blonde lawyer at the end, who genuinely just wanted Ted to get off because, he wasn't competent to stand trial. And poor Ted, he's not competent. Like, it's not people saying he was cute that's the problem. It's women like her who, like, are so stuck in this idea that, like, no one should be executed ever. I mean, if there was ever a poster child for legal execution, it's Ted Bundy.